Hey there, friends. A lot of information has come out since the Luigi Mangione guy has been captured. This, again, is the shooter who shot the United Healthcare Workers CEO up in New York. Odd information coming out. How many times do we see this? We see a high-profile situation like this. We see different things attached to it, and we see, I guess, dead ends that really create question marks in the actual story. I want you to see this clip first that I pulled from Fox News that's got some interesting stuff in it, and then I want to go through some other stuff that I've kind of uncovered looking at many of the other news reports out there.
Right now, the 26-year-old suspect accused of fatally shooting a healthcare CEO in cold blood blocks from here in New York City is in custody. Luigi Mangione is a prep school grad with Ivy League degrees. He's from a well-off family, is reportedly not shy about his anti-capitalist views, which police found in his manifesto, handwritten when they arrested him. Retired FBI Special Agent Robert Dreek's been looking at this and has some questions. Robin, what stands out? Those are the basics I just gave the audience. Where do you go from here?
Yeah, what stands out, Brian, is something happened in this guy's life arc, as I call it. And started, looks like, in Hawaii when he fell off the grid and he's reporting back pain. And so we want to start looking at data points that brought us to where we're at, because he was very well liked, which is really unusual for someone that's about to commit or does commit murder. And so that's where I want to look. I'm also looking at the fact that he held on to that gun.
So, Robin, the other thing to add, too, is you brought up something interesting in the break. What was his plan? Was he knew this CEO. He knew enough to track him, and you believe that perhaps he saw him before. And was there a plan to kill somebody else?
Yeah, very true. When we first saw the first images in the video of him shooting the CEO in cold blood, the fact that he recognized him so rapidly on that street, it says to me that he just wasn't looking at a photo. He either did a deep dive on videos or he saw him live before. And where did he get that information that he's going to be there? So were there other people involved? And the fact that he held on to all the IDs, he held on to this cash, he had the gun. One of the reasons why the police were going and diving for evidence in that pond was because usually criminals and murderers get rid of the evidence. He held on to it. Was he planning more things? And so that's what they're really going to be doing a deep dive on.
Right. And you said it's also part of a generation that can't deal with stress and strife.
Yeah, that's part of the challenge here is that, so he hits 26 years old. And so a hypothesis is he falls off his parents' health insurance plan, and he sees himself with this victim mentality as a social justice warrior. Instead of going from 0 to 5 miles an hour, as James Clear talks about in Atomic Habits, he goes from 0 to 100, 0 to violence, 0 to death. No problem-solving skills whatsoever.
Apparently. But when you have back pain, we always think about pain medication and how it's been life-altering and addicting. He didn't have any pills on him, but you're wondering if that could play a role in it because he seems to have retracted from his friends and family.
Yeah, there's definitely some sort of life-triggering event that happened, because when you have a life arc like this and there's consistent behavior with others and all of a sudden there's a spike, there's a big change. There's a change in how he's...
But you just mentioned that the change of behavior is just quite transparent because he has social media postings, and on there are some of his friends and relatives commenting, where have you been?
Okay, guys, so once again, a manifesto, right? How many times do we see these questionable things that simply don't add up? But since they don't add up and questions need to be answered, they produce a manifesto. So it answers everybody's questions, except the Nashville trans shooter. Let's not forget that one. We ain't going to ever see the rest of that one. But still, it's like your normal, everyday, run-of-the-mill murderer doesn't run around and capture all of his writings on paper and then publish them or have them with them even all the time, right? This person had to have known, this Luigi character had to have known that he was going to be caught or possibly killed. And really, I'm shocked that he hasn't, and I can't use the word because YouTube will delete this video, but I'm shocked that he has not self-deleted in this case, because that's usually what happens when they produce these magnificent manifestos that answer all of our unanswered questions out there. So now we know everything that went on. It just creates more questions. I also find it kind of odd. You guys have seen the pictures of the, quote, ghost gun in question. New York, of all places, but using a ghost gun and a suppressor. You just saw a report that came out this morning, at least I did, where a representative of the White House has said that they're going to do everything they can in the next 42 days until Trump takes over to ram their things through that they haven't been successful. Actually, using his term, a sprint to the finish line is what he said. Suppressors, quote, ghost guns. These are things at the top of their list. Are they any more dangerous than anything else out there being used? No, of course not. It's tiny pinpricks to get to ultimately what they want, which is a semi-automatic firearm handgun. You can take baby steps to take all the other things away so that people start getting used to their rights being stripped from them and things being confiscated, so that whenever they get to the thing that they actually wanted, the average slave out there doesn't feel as infringed upon because they're so used to them they're just taking something else from us, like they did the suppressors and the ghost guns. So these are calculated steps to get to what they actually want. Do they really want the suppressors and the quote ghost guns? Not really. They're looking at the bigger picture. They want everything. So by taking the things that fewer people use, because let's face it, fewer people are 3D printing guns. Hat tip to you out there, Alex, who is the control pew. He's the master at it. And suppressors. Now, the popularity of suppressors is growing. That may be another reason why they're wanting to use that. And again, I'm not saying this is some big conspiracy, but boy, it's not lost on me the things that are at the top of the news cycle as far as topics and subjects always manage to find their way in something like this whenever they're not popular in these types of situations. In other words, quote, ghost guns and suppressors are not the things of choice in crimes like this. So it's unusual that they do show up. But whenever you have a high-profile event like this, they manage to show up. They're not popular in these same crimes elsewhere unless it's a headline grabber. Then they manage to squeak that in there. It makes us all ask these same questions when that happens. I thought it was also interesting and very eye-opening to me that they mentioned that the victim mentality of this 26-year-old suddenly realizing that he's on the hook for his own insurance at 26 years old. How many of us were worried about our parents taking care of us at 26? But very eye-opening, and I think a lot of truth to that these young people these days can't cope. And they are conditioned by the media, they're conditioned by politicians to immediately jump to being a victim instead of going, I have an issue here. I have an issue that needs to be resolved. How do I resolve it and move on from it? No, they hit a brick wall whenever they hit any kind of resistance, and they can't seem to go past it. They're certainly not trying to figure out how to go past it, but they want to immediately sit down and crisscross applesauce mode and cross their arms and go, I'm the victim here. Somebody help me. And that's what they're alluding to here. Now, regarding the question that this guy is saying about how he knew Thompson was going to be there, I don't think that's that big of a deal. I don't think that this Luigi character went through a ton of research to figure out that Thompson was going to be there. This was a very well-known investors conference. And again, how weird is it that you have a CEO of an insurance company giving advice on investors, right? There's a lot of a backstory there to Thompson. Don't be fooled by that. But I don't think that it's a big deal that Luigi knew that Thompson was going to be there, because Thompson, being a bit of an ego hound himself, which again, you have to do a little research on Thompson, which quit putting angel wings on the guy and let's talk about who he was and what he did. The guy was very proud that he was there. He was one of the main speakers there. And of course, he's the CEO of one of the largest healthcare companies in the country. So he was happy to tell people he was there. He likely expected them to advertise that he was going to be there for a little bit of that ego boost. So I don't think you would have had to look very far for this Luigi guy to know that Thompson was going to, in fact, be there. The thing that probably got me more than anything was how quickly he recognized him, kind of like what this guy was saying. You know, it's not like he looked him in the face unless they were making direct eye contact when the guy walked up. But it's like he recognized just by his walk. You can recognize people by their walk, right? Their gait, their stride, you can tell. So he knew he had the right guy, because this guy Luigi doesn't seem like a calculated, cold-blooded killer out to just kill a whole bunch of people randomly. This was the guy he wanted to shoot, because remember, he didn't shoot the innocent bystander that was also downrange from him. He let him run. So he was not just trying to murder people. He wanted to murder Thompson, and that was it. So he certainly recognized the guy whenever he walked up. So which tells me he probably was in contact with him at some form, even if it was in the same room or something, to be able to recognize his walk and him from the side and the back as he walked past him. Now, I've got tons of questions. Of course, you guys know that this Luigi guy grew up in a wealthy home. Obviously, he went to a very prestigious school. To me, this also shows you that these kids are indoctrinated, taught to be victims. When you're going to the University of Pennsylvania, a very expensive school to go to, with a silver spoon in his mouth, but still could not outsmart, no matter how brilliant he was, he still could not outsmart the people who were indoctrinating these young people in schools today. They look up to them and they believe every word they say. And this guy clearly, I mean, I know he was a, quote, fugitive, but the mask. I mean, he wore a mask before he was the shooting and after the shooting. Clearly a far left-leaning liberal. This guy had all the makings of what you would normally expect when we always say, hey, liberals, Democrats, can you get control of your people? This is another one that you guys let out. Now, at the time that the Altoona police took him into custody, it was based on charges that were unrelated to the healthcare CEO's murder. They actually hit him with possession of an unlicensed firearm and providing false identification to police and forgery. So this is the arrest information. As you can see up towards the top there, act of the accused, they say offense defined, a person is guilty of forgery if with intent to defraud or injure anyone or with knowledge, and then they list the code there. Well, look what's highlighted in yellow down below. I got this from GOA, by the way. Firearm not to be carried without a license. So they're charging him in Pennsylvania for a crime of carrying a firearm without a license. Now, they'll likely hit him for some other crazy stuff regarding to the gun. And of course, they're going to hit him with gun charges also in New York. So look for the gun charges to be something that a lot of people are going to stand on street corners and beat their chest about, because they finally got somebody. They've been wanting to get somebody for a very long period of time with one of their, quote, ghost guns and suppressors. So this is a way for them to say, see, they are being used in crimes. So this is going to be abused as far as this knowledge about what types of firearm was being used and the attachments with them. And, of course, how they produced it. You know, are 3D printers next? You know, they're already trying to go after the, quote, ghost guns. If this thing was likely printed with a 3D printer, do they start trying to clamp down on regulating 3D printers? I mean, I kind of expect them to, because they act like they're trying to get ahead of things like this whenever it's not a real threat, but they want to feel like they're doing something. Again, legislators don't have a job if they're not creating new laws. So they have to be doing something. And this is a way for them to go, cool, new law, 3D printers, outlaw them or regulate them. Now I'm going to start getting off into the question mark area. The area that always interests me in cases like this, the things that don't make sense, the things that simply don't add up. The things that do not fall in line with every other activity like this. When you see this type of shooting, whether it's calculated, whether it's random, there's always similarities abound with some of these things. And this one here has some very glaring things that jump out of line at you. First of all, this isn't a huge thing, but they did have a Faraday bag that the shooter said that he had his phone in, and he just said it was a waterproof bag. If you guys don't know what a Faraday bag is, it's more likely, and I actually use them as well. I put my key fobs in them for my vehicles so that the people with those really fancy computers where they can grab that signal that the key fob is constantly emitting, you put them inside a Faraday box or a Faraday bag, and no one can actually capture that signal. I happen to have one of the vehicles. I think the Ford F-250 is one of the most stolen vehicles out there, kind of like the easiest stolen vehicle too. So I just have the Faraday bags for all of my vehicles where I put those keys in them at night and I close the Faraday bag and it blocks that signal. He had one for his cell phone, which is a little bit unusual because you don't see that a lot, but clearly some thought went into, I think, getting away. And again, I'm not going to talk about any possible outside involvement, if you will. Let me just leave it at that. Outside involvement with this guy, mentoring him and getting him into the position that he was at like this. Let's remember, this guy for months now has not spoken to his family or any of his friends. This guy has kind of fallen off the grid. Nobody's heard from him. Nobody knows what he's been up to. And then suddenly he pops up in a situation like this, using Faraday bags to block his cell phone, has a homemade gun, a suppressor. Very, very weird things, if you ask me. Again, I don't think the guy expected to get caught. But the other thing is he held on to the gun. That's very strange. If a guy is using a Faraday bag to block the signal, clearly he's trying to get away. The guy mentioned the possibility that he might go on to commit another crime similar to this. Possible? Maybe it's in his, quote, manifesto that they uncovered. But nobody has talked about that yet. Nobody has said what a secondary target possibly was. So unless the guy was trying to escape so he could go somewhere else and commit the same crime, why was he trying to escape? But he was keeping the gun that is in one of the most high-profile murders in the world, likely, certainly in the United States. Why was he keeping the firearm that he committed that crime with? Very, very unusual. Again, to think something through like the Faraday bag and some of the other things, but not to think that part of it through is a little suspect to me. And how about this? The prosecutors in the case said that he was carrying $10,000 in cash, including $2,000 in foreign currency. Now, Mangione, Luigi, disputed the amount, saying, quote, I don't know where that money came from. It must have been planted. I don't have that kind of cash. In all of this that has happened, that's the thing that stands out to me the most. Why would he lie about the cash? I mean, who cares, right? He's got the gun used in the crime, so he's obviously not trying to lie that he wasn't the guy, right? So why lie about the money? He had no reason to lie about the money. He had nothing to gain by that. I mean, if it was his money and he had $2,000 in foreign currency, he could have easily said, yeah, y'all got me. I'm the shooter. I was going to leave the country. Dummy. That's what the money was for. But he didn't state that. He immediately said, and this is a guy that's nervous, right? This guy, they said he was shaking whenever they asked him if he was from or had visited New York lately. This guy was very clear to come out and say, that's not my money. And immediately say, y'all must have planted that on me. Now, 10,000, what a nice round number that is. So did the guy save exactly $10,000? Does he have this big stash of cash somewhere else where he has some other odd amount of money that he's also been saving and he just decided not to bring that? In other words, why do you bring just $10,000 to go commit a crime that you're likely going to either be shot or locked up for? Why do you bring that amount of money? Why did he save exactly $10,000 and then decide, now it's time for me to go on my killing spree? And again, the $2,000 of the foreign money. Well, I'd like to know what country that foreign money was for. Are they going to come out and say that it was Mexico, Canada, or some other country out there that he was planning to go to? It didn't seem like he was in a real big hurry because, again, several days later, he's only one state away from where he committed the crime. The dude was not hustling very hard to exit the country if he was, in fact, trying to exit the country. I think more questions need to be asked, and we're never going to find out, but more needs to be asked about this money. Where did that money originate from? I want to know more about that because it doesn't make sense to me. I have to repeat this, guys. If he's trying to get away, why have the gun that you committed the crime with? But why would the guy deny that that's his money? It's not like they have him on some circumstantial evidence like, well, you might be the guy. Well, they know they have the guy. They know they have him. And Luigi knows he's the guy, and he knows that they know that he's the right guy. He's not trying to get out of this crime right now. But he immediately told them, that ain't my money. Somebody must have planted that there. That is strange. Now, granted, the guy's likely had money before because, again, as I mentioned, that his family hadn't heard from him in a while. Clearly, he's had access to money, that's for sure. Because at one time, he was living in some high-rise in Hawaii, of all places, and he was sharing a penthouse with somebody that start at $1,600 per month for a twin bedroom and up to $3,300 a month for a king corner space. So even if he was sharing with somebody, he was paying out $800 and something a month plus whatever living expenses. And anybody that's been to Hawaii knows that a hamburger costs about $12 in Hawaii. So it's not cheap to live there. So the guy clearly had access to money at some time. Now remember, they claimed that he had a job making $40,000 a year. So he wasn't broke. But again, what 26-year-old do you know that's disciplined enough to save $10,000 in American currency and $2,000 in foreign currency? Answer me that. And as this story alluded to about him having medical bills for some back accident that he had, seems kind of odd to me that for somebody complaining about insurance possibly not covering his opioid drugs or his back issues, that he's still wandering around with $12,000 in cash, but is murdering people because he doesn't have the money to pay his own medical bills. Doesn't add up.
I don't understand the point that you're making.
God save the Queen, man.
I'm sorry, I thought this was America.